Hello, welcome to my YouTube videos. This is the first one of hopefully many, depending on what sort of reception I get. Chances are they're going to start bad and maybe get worse, or maybe they'll get better. I don't know. I don't know how these things really work. I just want to ramble and I just want to rant. So today I realised it was 24 days until the local elections, and I want to draw comparisons to an advent calendar and open a box every day and see what's behind curtain number one. And I want to start with box number one being, why is it so silent? Why is this election being kept so quiet by the mainstream media? Why aren't the parties out there pushing their policies? I mean, what are the local policies in your area? Who's campaigning in your area? Who's standing for your local wards? Do you know? Or you can research it. Has it been declared? It's 24 days away, and this information is very scarce. It's unbelievable. But local elections do have a massive impact on people's lives. They seem to get hung up on the general election side of things and completely ignore local elections where we have a much lower turnout. If you actually look at how much of an impact local elections have on your lives, it decides, how your roads are fixed, how your bins get collected, all the issues that people go to their MP and complain about generally get controlled at your local authority level. But there's also another side to this local election that's going to be decided, and that's going to be who controls Holyrood. And let's be honest, if the SNP win by a massive majority, the authoritarian to totalitarian SNP, the Scottish Nationalist Party, the only nationalism that's apparently acceptable, but it is still based on xenophobic rhetoric towards the English, because England having any control or say over their lives, and they should basically have, one Scottish vote should be worth 10 English votes. That's how they see it, because that would be a fair and equitable system. I don't get their arguments behind it. We've been a union and we work, we vote together, and it's always been this way. It's just ridiculous. But the referendum arguments aside, because I think we could do those to death, and I could do another video on why voting for independence in Scotland would be an utter catastrophe for those in Scotland, and the suffering that they would endure is written down by the Scottish Nationalist Party's own reports. So if you're really interested, go and read what the SNP have said themselves about how disastrous independence would be fiscally and economically for the people of Scotland, and then come back and say if you can still support the Scottish National Party on their quest for independence and their one sole goal in life. But as for what the impact is on local issues, let's remember that general elections come around, and the top issues generally come in, depending on the order, will be the NHS, the economy. They're going to be your top two, and it's either going to be the economy or the NHS, or the NHS or the economy. If the economy is going bad, it's going to be the economy. If the economy is going well, it's going to be the NHS. And how much money each party is going to give to it, and each party every time is going to say, I'm going to give X billion, or this billion, or that billion. No one ever just turns around and says, I'm actually going to look at the waste in the NHS and stop it. But in these elections, we're, in Scotland, we're not hearing anything about the NHS, which is strange, really, because this is where the NHS is controlled. So the Scottish National Party have complete control of the National Health Service in Scotland. The Labour Party currently have complete control of the National Health Service in Wales, give or take a few areas. But yet we never hear talks about the NHS and the local elections. I mean, how much is it the SNP pledging to give additionally to the NHS in this local elections? How much is any party in Scotland promising? It's just not talked about. It's like an issue that's just reserved for general elections, when actually in that general election it just generally affects England. So I can see an argument for saying, well, actually, can we look at what issues are actually on the table when we vote and discuss the issues that are on the table, as opposed to just always talking about the same damn thing. But one issue that is on the table during this election is the union under threat? Will the union survive the local elections? Now, the reason I say this is because we all know the SNP are driven by one factor and one factor alone. They want independence. I mean, they don't care about how Scotland's currently doing in its educational system. They don't care that it's got the highest drug death rate in Europe. They don't care about anything other than getting independence. And if they get a majority, that is going to be, to them, a big tick in the box for independence. And not just independent, but well, the referendum for independence. And in their eyes, they'll keep going and going and going and going. They're never going to stop. Every time there's a material change in the United Kingdom, whenever they've lost a referendum, that's an excuse for another referendum. Now, people can turn around and say, well, Brexit was a serious, different change. But let's be perfectly honest. The SNP put in their arguments for independence in 2014 that staying a member of the United Kingdom meant they were going to leave the European Union, because that is the direction of travel the United Kingdom was going. I mean, it was obvious to pretty much everyone apart from the media elite and those that couldn't see or sort of feel the mood of the country, if you like. But anyway, the SNP picked up on it, so that they knew what people were, in the UK were thinking. And obviously, we dragged them out of the EU against their will, even though without the million plus Leave voters in Scotland, we'd have remained, because without their votes, we wouldn't have had enough on the Leave side to actually win the referendum. So, thank you to every single Scottish Leave voter, because without you, we'd still be a member of the European Union. And look how disastrous that would have been for us right now, because, well, I can't see any prime minister or government going against the EU's procurement programs as a member of the European Union. I mean, they were slated for not joining the EU's procurement programs after we'd left the European Union, let alone being a member and then watching them deliver absolutely nothing, and then the most disastrous vaccine rollout I've ever seen. So, yeah, I'm completely glad and thankful for all those Scottish Leave voters that helped us leave the European Union. And the SNP should perhaps remember that there are people in Scotland that do want to leave the European Union, and they do want to remain in the United Kingdom, and maybe take those into considerations in your daily, COVID update SNP propaganda briefs that were going on for quite some time. But anyway, like I was saying, so if they get a majority, it's going to be open season on the referendum, and they're going to push and push and push. Now, Boris Johnson in it will have every right to turn around and say, no, you had a vote in 2014. Yes, that was 7 years ago, but it was a once in a generation vote. Now, 7 years, a lot happens. In 2015, Alex Salmond turned around and said that a Conservative majority against an SNP majority in Scotland was enough of a material change for another independence referendum. 2016, we had the Brexit vote. That was again enough material change for another independence referendum. If, say, for instance, they have another independence referendum in 2022, as I'd imagine it would come if they were to win the majority, push for the referendum, have it accepted and legislated for, lose that referendum, then in 2023/2024, again, the Conservatives might win a majority, and again, that would be a material change, even though it would be the exact same situation, because the Conservatives were in power in 2014 as well as 2015. Coalition or majority, doesn't really matter. They were still the governing party. For them to push again for another referendum, they live for one thing, one purpose, and that is to drag the Scotland out of the United Kingdom, and those that enable them should be ashamed, because it's putting that above all other issues. I mean, there's no logical reason to want to split ties with your largest trading partner, to put up barriers with, you know, I could compare it, you know, you could make the comparison, oh, well, you did the same to Brexit and it's your largest trading partner. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's a fair enough comment. But the difference is we are still going to trade with the EU under pretty much the same terms that we always have, and we always knew we'd do that. Scotland, on the other hand, will not trade with the UK under the same terms. Scotland doesn't have its own currency. It's going to have to sort of set up all of the institutions that we don't have to set up, that we didn't have to set up, that, you know, the Armageddon scare stories that should be playing out right now in front of us aren't going to happen. Whereas in Scotland, they are actually going to give away more power to the EU than we ever gave away to the EU, because they're going to have to join Schengen, they're going to have to join the Euro, which means there's going to have to be a border between the UK, the rest of the UK and Scotland. It's going to make trade difficult. It's going to cause all sorts of issues. That's if they ever get into the EU, because with the size of their deficit, you know, again, this is making arguments against independence, but why not? With the size of their deficit, it's ridiculous. I mean, back to their welfare powers that are devolved to Scotland. Did you know that Scotland's completely in charge of its own welfare spending? Have you heard anything about that during the election? No, of course you haven't, because the last I heard about that, they delayed taking responsibility until 2025. So they can whinge and they can moan, but a devolved matter that they could take responsibility for and change now, they can't, because they're not ready. But it would have taken them 18 months to be ready for complete independence of the United Kingdom. So a vote for SNP is a vote for a referendum. Now, a way around this could be the Conservatives and Labour coming together for once for the benefit of the United Kingdom in Scotland, and saying, let's work together, let's stop these, you know, drug deaths that are unnecessary, let's sort out the education system that's collapsing, let's stop people having to leave Scotland to go to the UK, to England to treatment from the NHS. There's loads that both Labour and the Conservatives will agree on and coalesce around. One of them's stopping Scotland leaving the Union. But unfortunately, the new elected leader of the Scottish Labour Party has already basically said, no, I won't work with the Conservatives, but he's open to working with the SNP, which sounds about right, doesn't it? Let's not work with the Conservatives on, you know, constructive, proactive improvements of Scotland that's desperately crying out for help, as less and less people go to university, the attainment gap between rich and poor grows, poverty increases, unemployment rates skyrocket. But no, that they'd rather work with the SNP with the guarantee that they'd back them in an independence referendum. Cool. As opposed to working to improve the lives and well-being of the Scottish people. But hey, we're 24 days away from a local election. This is the assembly election that's tagged on to the side of that. There'll be more videos on this to follow, but this is my first attempt, so leave some comments, leave some feedback. It's not scripted, as you can tell, so it's all just literally a man rambling away, as I say. Eventually I'll get better at it, or I won't. But hey, who knows? Maybe next time I'll do some research and actually look at some points to talk about. But on the 24th day of the local elections, the UK gave to me the biggest threat ever, the SNP.